English translation 361st contact, Thursday, 24th of June 2004, 23:36 hours.
It will be a long night tonight, Eduard, my dear friend, because we will have many things to discuss.
That is not a problem if I can go over 2 or 3 times to check on the night watch and the stove, because the nights are still so cold, you need to heat. Also, I still have to take my medication, without which it is unfortunately no longer possible since my collapse in 1982, as you know.
It is not a problem if you have to leave on several occasions during our conversation. But I think it will be 3:30 hours or 4 hours until we have discussed everything. And I am sure you also have some things that need to be discussed, which will make it even later. So the time this night will be quite long if I still consider the time until 22:15 HRs, which we already worked together with Bernadette for the contact blocks this night.
It is really no problem, Ptaah. So do not worry about it. But maybe it is good if we discuss the things that come from my side first before we get into what you have to talk to me about. Thus we can get my business behind us. What do you think?
You can have it however you want.
Good. Today, the newspapers brought reports that a certain Kim Sun-il, a 33-year-old Korean man, was beheaded by terrorists in Iraq because the Korean government refused to withdraw Korean aid troops or aid workers from Iraq. Other foreigners in Iraq have also been murdered in the same manner. Nor is there any end to the terrorist attacks in Iraq, which, in addition to the U.S. military, mainly kill innocent Iraqi women, children, and men. In other countries, too, there are more and worse terrorist attacks by actual terrorists. If one does not add to this the U.S. military terrorism that is being carried out in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc., and if one disregards the murderous terror of the Israelis against the Palestinians, and vice versa, the latter against the Israelis, and everything all around has no chance, in my opinion, of getting better in the near term or in the near future. Because if the United States does not finally withdraw from all the countries of the world and sweep its own muck at its own doors, then everything will only get worse. The blame for the whole debacle and mess in relation to global terrorism, and especially that in Iraq and Afghanistan, lies fundamentally and exclusively with the Americans who are spreading their global military, sectarian, and economic terror. And the fact that they have invaded Afghanistan and Iraq under the guise of fighting terrorism and making peace, as they have done in many other places, and have brought and spread death, murder, torture, and destruction, is only a small part of what the USA has been spreading in its greed for world power since time immemorial. The righteous Americans who do not accept all this are unfortunately in the minority and are suppressed, shouted down and stamped into the ground by the war advocates and by the world power-obsessed superiority. And as for the torture used by U.S. military, U.S. intelligence and U.S. mercenaries in their criminal wars and political intrigues, it is really a joke when it is claimed that the responsible powers of the USA have not ordered the torture, or at least have not approved of it. This is also the case with Iraq, and not only in Abu Ghraib prison, because torture has been and continues to be carried out in secret in other prisons and other countries by U.S. forces in the form of military personnel and mercenaries. Torture has also been and continues to be carried out in Afghanistan and Guantanamo Bay, which is of course also being kept secret, as is the fact that criminals, whatever their nationality and whatever their crime or minor offenses, are mistreated and tortured. And just think of the inhumanity of the death penalty, which still exists in America, and of the inhuman legislation in many respects. But back to Iraq. Although U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld now admits that he has approved certain harsh interrogation measures, he does not stand for giving direct orders. Even the U.S. President George W. Bush does not stand by it and claims that he himself did not order torture. But I do not believe this guy, because his eyes and his whole physiognomy speak a completely different language when he distances himself from torture orders. The man is not only self-important and irresponsible, But he feels so arrogant and powerful, as if he were the most powerful thing in the universe. Just looking at his hand and body movements and his gait, which is evidence of a tremendous megalomania and omnipotence mania, makes you feel sick. What do you think or know about the future in this respect? Does everything continue within the same framework? And what about the US president? Does he really know nothing about torture orders, and is he not involved in it, as he says, which I cannot imagine? All his behavior, his movements, his eyes, his walking, and his facial expressions when he talks are evidence of something else for me. His behavior also seems extremely psychopathic and paranoid and therefore delusional, which in turn coincides with his delusion that he is commissioned by God as a kind of avenger to ensure law and order, peace and freedom on earth. But that he practices exactly the opposite of this through the US military, the US Secret Services, and the US mercenaries, etc., he does not realize in his paranoia. So he allows killing, murder, torture, and destruction in a completely irresponsible and criminal manner, whereby he still has paranoid lunatics behind him, who cry out for revenge, retaliation, and world domination just as much as he himself does.
Unfortunately, your statements correspond to the full reality in every respect. Bush does not speak the truth because, like Rumsfeld, he too has ordered harsh interrogation methods, which can and must very well be understood as torture. You judge your observations of his person and facial expressions when speaking, as well as his movements, his walking, his behavior, his eyes, and his whole behavior very precisely, and thus, as it could not be clearer. And the terrorist attacks will continue and even increase in their extent. Especially in Iraq, the next days will be very bad. All in all, everything will intensify and increase, and this also applies to the whole world. Because as long as the USA stretches out its hands for world domination and plays world police, as well as religious sectarian expansion and economically puts other countries in distress and floods, there will be no peace on the earth. Only when the USA withdraws from all objectionable matters of the world will a way open up which will restrict and bring to a halt terrorism as it is known today through the fault of the USA. If, however, the U.S. does not withdraw from the world and is not content with handling and solving its own problems at home, global terrorism will continue to exist and increase steadily. Ultimately, it will also be the case that entire states will rise up against U.S. America, and a war disaster of unprecedented proportions can bring a tremendous catastrophe over the whole earth. In the end, many old prophecies would become reality, which can be prevented. However, if the Earth humans finally come to their senses and, instead of giving power to the misguided rulers, begin to bear it together and listen to those who strive for peace and freedom as well as love and harmony. But it really does require that power be taken out of the hands of the powerful leaders, and that the rationality of those who strive for peace gain the upper hand. If this does not finally happen, then earthly humanity is heading towards a dark future.
Your words in the earthly human ear. But unfortunately, it is still the case that the majority of people are obedient to authority, and through this and their own irresponsibility leave power in the hands of those fallible and false powers of state who lead humanity into misery and ruin, which also destroys a great deal. And how incapable many state powers are, and how they are not able to lead the people in a healthy and correct framework, can be seen daily in the public media. Betrayal of the people is just as important to many as treason against the country, and the powerful find many among the people who are pulling in the same direction as them. And as in companies and corporations, the financial administrators of the states are incompetent creatures, and are putting countries into ever-increasing debt instead of reducing it. Of course, many of the rulers and the people howl along with these wolves, because they too know almost nothing about finance, except for getting into debt. And just as those in power do, it also rubs off on the people, as a result of which they too sink into a sea of debt. Although the difference with the state debt makers is that they can squander billions with impunity and criminally, and thus incur debt, while ordinary citizens are held accountable for it and punished if possible. At the very least, the ordinary citizens are prosecuted and seized. They are put on the spot by the bailiff, and then they have to pay off their debts, perhaps with a prison sentence. This, while the debtors of the governments are not brought to justice with one iota, as often happens with company and corporate managers, etc., who slip through the loopholes of the law.
That is also our insight. It is really very unfortunate that there are people at work in the earthly governments who have little or no knowledge and little experience of their obligations in relation to their office and to the population. As far as we know, persons are being appointed to all sorts of official posts for which they are not fit, and therefore issue orders and decrees, etc., which are completely misguided. If governments are really to be managed in a correct, expedient, state-supporting and population-friendly manner, then wise humans with sufficient knowledge and experience must be selected who are knowledgeable and capable, enough in their particular area of responsibility to be able to conduct their office in the best possible form, to govern properly and to conduct and manage the affairs of state to the full satisfaction of the people means that the best and highest effort is made in a self-determined and responsible manner, with full responsibility, and that both the subordinates of the government and the whole people are managed in a purposeful and responsible manner. This also means that through this, among the rulers and the people, as well as these together, all business must be discussed, dealt with, decided upon, and carried out in reverential harmony with each other. Neither the rulers nor the people may go it alone in making decisions and carrying them out, for there must be a constant cooperation, both in making decisions and in the transacting. Only so can a state really function in such a wise that real freedom and harmony can reign in unity, and that real peace can truly emerge among the people themselves, in cooperation with the rulers who must be involved in these values. But fundamentally, it must be so that all these values are worked out by the individual in himself or herself in order to attain their validity also in their own families. And only when this happens, then the possibility will be created that everything will be able to carry itself out into the whole people and into the government, and will bear really valuable fruit.
Well, unfortunately, that is really not how it is on our beautiful Mother Earth. Many human beings destroy a lot of things, live only for themselves, and do not give a damn about the well-being of their fellow human beings, the fauna and flora and the planet. They continue to wreak havoc until everything is irrevocably destroyed, and the human beings, together with all other life forms, perish miserably. Your words are profoundly true and could not be better chosen. Many human beings lack not only the rationality, but also the intellect. And many are self-important, arrogant, irresponsible, petty, and always out to throw others into the frying pan in order to profit themselves. Many are also notorious liars, cheats and slanderers who believe their own lies and can no longer distinguish between lies and truth and follow those who also want to raise their image through lies and deceit and appear great before their fellow human beings. And again there are know-it-alls who want to know everything better than those who really know the truth. And it is just such a troublemaker and know-it-all by the name of Leroy Ellenberger that one of our passive members has come across, as a result of 2 typing errors that unfortunately crept into Contact Report Volume Number 4. Instead of cubic kilometers, it says cubic meters, which is obvious to any rational human being. This Leroy Ellenberger, however, finds it necessary to practically call it a hoax or something and make a fuss about it, as well as about the spelling mistake that the destroyer is 1.72 times bigger than the Earth, instead of 1.56 times bigger. Christian Frainer received an email from Larry Driscoll with this Leroy Ellenberger's cheeky letter, which of course we talked about, whereupon Christian sent me the following fax which you should please read. Here, this is the fax.
Thanks.
Ptaah reads Christian's fax.
So, what was your answer to that? I announced the corrections when I created the block, book, volume, but apparently they were not noticed.
Look here. I pulled this out of the Yintern 50th original report dated from the 10th of October 1981. The corrections were made by Quetzal, as they were made by him at the time. Unfortunately, there seem to have been errors in the new contact report volume number 4 when reading it in with regard to the cubic kilometers and the number 1.56. In the original report, everything is correct, as you can see. There is further simply the difference that in the new contact report volume number 4, we named the cubic kilometer content of the Earth as 1083.3 million, as originally recorded in the uncorrected original report, instead of writing 1,083,300,000,000. 1083.3 billion is correct, however, because 1,000 billion is a trillion, 083 billion remain what they are, and 3 is also 300 million. So everything is correct, but this does not seem to make sense to Leroy Ellenberger, because he is obviously not as intelligent as he likes to pretend and see himself. So look at the original text here, which clearly shows that in the contact report block, no. 4, there are simply typing errors, which unfortunately were overlooked by me or by Bernadette, or simply not realized.
The matter is quite obvious, because I too am in possession of the same original script, which I can remember very well, since we worked through it together. And what else do you have here?
An extract regarding the Santorini volcano. Here.
Ah, yes, that list Quetzal gave you back then. I would like to have Christian Freiner say a few words about this and the other thing through you, which you can then immediately send to him with your fax machine.
I will, but first I have to turn on the computer, so now it is working. But I will write Christian some introductory lines first, if you allow me.
That is without question.
Good. Then I will write the following.
Hi, Christian. Since Ptaah is here at the moment, he helps me to search the original text of the Sim-Ya-Se reports, whereby it turns out that quite obviously something unpleasant has crept into Volume 4, page 293, sentence 539, as a check of the original page 1668 shows, as you can read yourself on the faxed original page, which contains Quetzal's corrections from 1981 third at the bottom of the page. Unfortunately, the two errors were apparently somehow overlooked or not caught by Bernadette in the correction, because Ptaah says that the errors in the old and uncorrected printed original copies were still noticed and reported by himself, but apparently not corrected, and all the correctors did not see the errors and did not query or correct them. Perhaps I did not catch his correction and did not listen properly during Bernadette's reading out, so perhaps I overheard the mistakes and did not correct them. Ptaah said that this was possible because I was not quite up to the mark at the time of the correction, because I had a headache and I did not feel well otherwise. This is not an excuse, because if it really is the case, then I should have been more careful and stayed with it. Unfortunately, I obviously did not do well, so we now have to publish a correction and add it to Volume 4 as a correction sheet. Admittedly, the errors are only small and not serious, because the only thing that is wrong is the cubic meter, which must be called cubic kilometer, and the multiplication factor 1.72, which is 1.56, because the figure of 1083.3 billion is correct, because 1,000 billion 1 before the number 083 is 1 trillion. 083 is also correct because that is billion, as is the 3, which is 300 million. If this type of intelligence, Leroy Ellenberger, cannot cope with mathematics and cannot interpret the numbers, then he cannot be helped. As with the volume of the Earth, it is also true for the volume of the destroyer. So it is also correct except for the error cubic meter, which must be called cubic kilometer. Ptaah, he was here right after our joint work with Bernadette, also had explained that everything is correct, except for the error with the cubic meter instead of the cubic kilometer and the multiplication factor 1.72 and 1.56, which are correct in the original.
What do you think, my friend? Can this be left as it is? I think the whole thing should be understandable.
What you have explained, everything has its exact correctness. Further explanations in this matter might be superfluous.
I will copy my explanation and yours out later, put it together, and fax it to Christian. Then you can dictate now.
Regarding the eruption of the Santorini volcano, Ptaah dictates the following.
Greetings, Christian Freiner, and understand well what I have to explain. You write the following to our friend Eduard. Ellenberger points out another point which in his opinion should not be true, namely the eruption of the Santorini volcano. According to Quetzal, page 288, this happened in 1453 BC. Ellenberger thinks that more recent research of the last 20 years has shown that this event happened around 1700 BC. It should be explained that our very accurate records correspond to the fact that the great and Santorini-destroying eruption of the volcano did not take place around 1700 BC, but undoubtedly in 1453 BC. My great-grandfather Hilak witnessed the event and made accurate records of the catastrophe. And according to the annals, the Santorini volcano has often erupted and was endangered by natural gas and seawater eruptions from time immemorial, which actually caused it to explode when water and natural gases burst into the magma, forming an explosive mixture that led to the catastrophe. So it is not correct that the destruction of the island by the Santorini volcano took place in 1700 BC, but actually in 1453 BC. Other statements are therefore just as wrong as insufficient research results of a geological or other kind. But it is also a fact that the frequent eruptions of the Santorini volcano over hundreds and thousands of years have created deposits that bear witness to the eruptions of the volcano. The volcano has had several major eruptions in the last 2,400 years BC, of which there were 3 between 1500 and 1760 BC alone, along with several smaller ones that were not too significant. In total, the entire ground and subsoil has changed so much that no exact reference points can be found for all small and large eruptions. In particular, the huge explosion of the Santorini volcano in 1,253 years BC threw the actual eruption material far out to sea, leaving hardly any traces on the remains of the once beautiful island and its surroundings, although older ones are easy to find. Thus, everything is evident from the records of my great-grandfather. So that dear Christian, Ptaah just dictated this into my computer so that I can fax it to you right away. Best regards, Billy. Also, Ptaah sends you his greetings.
Thanks for your effort.
It is my honor and pleasure. So now I am going to copy out both parts and fax them to Christian. It will only take 2 minutes, so there you have it. Then I will fax it quickly. Well, the busy signal is coming. Then I will try again. I cannot do it again. A third try. It is hopeless, dear friend. Apparently Christian's fax machine is on the blink again. I will have to phone him tomorrow to get his fax machine in order, so I cannot fax him our explanations until tomorrow noon or in the evening.
It will still be early enough tomorrow.
I think so. Then I have only 2 short questions now, if I may.
Of course.
We have spoken about this before, but I have been asked on several occasions how the Pleiadian women and men feel about vanity, whether they also have lifts and liposuction, cosmetic surgery, breast augmentation, etc., to rejuvenate their appearance or make them look younger. As I recall, you said that this was not the case.
That is correct. It is a bad habit of earthly women and men corresponding to a beauty craze to have plastic surgery performed. In addition, lifting and liposuction can have very adverse health effects, which can even lead to deformities of the face and body. Breast augmentation can also have very adverse effects, because the implants are and remain foreign bodies and can have a bad effect on health. Not to mention the fact that implants cause the breasts to take on an unnatural round ball shape, which, unlike natural breasts, is very unaesthetic. This is also the case with other parts of the body that are padded by implants. Such actions or operations on the body and face should only be performed if they are urgent due to deformities caused by illness or accident, etc. Otherwise, they should be avoided. People who nevertheless undergo such operations out of a need for beauty are really insane and suffer from inferiority complexes. Their wrong thoughts and feelings make them appear morbid to their fellow human beings as defective, void, unworthy, pitiful, imperfect, disadvantaged, and even as worthless and miserable. Humans who, through such operations and interventions in the naturalness of their body, face or any part of the body, want to acquire a more beautiful, feminine or masculine appearance, do exactly the opposite. Because through such interventions, they destroy the individuality and pithiness, as well as the normality, peculiarity, simplicity, truthfulness, uniformity, and originality of their body parts, or face. People who do this are delusional and also psychologically damaged, which is why they should be treated and educated by specialists in this regard instead of following their delusions through operations and other interventions. The naturalness, etc., of the body, all limbs and the face should be respected and thus be preserved until old age, as nature has produced everything and also produces with aging. So to bear the signs of nature and of old age, which alone testifies to dignity. Cosmetic operations, however, if they are not necessary for compelling medical reasons, testify to a lack of dignity and to the fact that humans who undergo such operations are insane. Such things are not usual with us, neither for women nor for men, because in fact a certain pride generally prevails among us to carry our bodies, limbs and faces with honor and dignity until the end of time, just as nature has created everything and changes it with age. To change something in this we consider dishonorable and undignified.
Thank you. You did not say it so clearly when I asked you about it. But I am glad that the beauty craze does not bear such unpleasant fruits with you as it does here on the earth. You know, and I am not the only one. Somehow I find everything also disgusting with the cosmetic surgery, especially with the padding of the breasts and the buttocks.
I can only agree with you.
Then I would like to ask you officially, what is the deal with all the UFO sightings in the US and South America? I know the answer, but we have only ever talked about them privately and not officially, so an official statement on your part would be important. Some time ago, dear American Passive members were with us in the center, and the talk was also about these frequent UFO sightings in America, Mexico and South America, so I explained the facts of the matter. Why so many people, often in groups, see UFOs that move, change their light intensity, appear in groups, unite and separate again, appear and disappear, etc.
I know your explanation, and it was also correct. The unknown flying objects that appear so frequently in the USA In Mexico and in various South American countries are in no wise flying apparatus of extraterrestrial origin, but objects that correspond to an earthly technology. Specifically, these are usually various types of aircraft, which are constructed in secret bases in the USA and tested in the entire North, Central and South American airspace, as well as in other countries of the world, without the world public or the military and governments of foreign states having any knowledge of them. These are then the so-called UFOs, which are sighted everywhere in the airspace of the entire American continent, as well as elsewhere in the world. Apart from the secret U.S.-American aircraft, there are few others which do not belong to any country, but are constructed by other powers and can often be observed. Flying apparatus of extraterrestrial origin are extremely rare to observe, because the Earth is far away from other inhabited worlds, so it does not often receive visits from beings from other worlds. This happens only extremely sporadically and therefore very rarely. So what can usually be observed of unknown flying objects around the world, and especially over the entire American continent, are not extraterrestrial unknown flying objects, but secret earthly flying machines of American and other origin. Excluded are, of course, our flying apparatus and surveillance flying objects, which can, of course, be observed by attentive observers both day and night. But with that, my friend, we should now turn to the matters we still have to discuss together.
Thank you for your explanation. Of course, let us turn to the other things.